Okay, my name is Robert SanGeorge, as it says on the slide there, and I will be your presenter tonight. My day job is that I'm the graduate career advisor and have been for about a dozen years for the School of Public Affairs. I've been doing presentations on salary negotiations for probably 8 or 9 years and developed this webinar, which I keep refining. So believe me, it's not the same one that you might have seen 8 years ago if you had been around here. And I would invite you to ask questions anytime you want in the chat or the Q&A. I've got both of them open. And but you're muted because we have all learned through hard experience that when everybody's microphone, there's 22 people attending right now and probably will be a few more. When 22 people's mics are open, we hear all kinds of stuff, you know, dogs barking and ambulances going by your house. And one time when I started doing webinars, left the mics open and somebody was doing the dishes while they were apparently listening to the webinar. So let's get going. Here's what we're going to be talking about. When to negotiate. What is relevant research when you're researching salaries? Understanding a concept called the midpoint, which has to do with salary bands of employers, okay? Various aspects of negotiating tactics, how to put together a relevant experience one-pager that is not a resume, but a document you would use to help you back up your request for more money than an employer seems to be willing to give you. Also, what is a master's degree worth? If you are, this webinar is mainly focused on seniors and grad students, so some of you may not be grad students, but anyway, we're going to talk about that for a bit. And what is negotiable when you're negotiating stuff with an employer, and then how to accept, which is basically graciously. I'll let you be in a sneak preview on what I'm going to say about that. So, and by the way, if you have a question, and I've gone on to another slide, ask it anyway, and I'm happy to go back, so don't worry about that. First of all, many people feel powerless, especially if you've only had internships before, and pretty much internships are not negotiable in terms of salary, you know, $15 an hour, because that happens to be the minimum wage in the District of Columbia, and, you know, take it or leave it. So a lot of people feel helpless, they don't know what to do, powerless, and we're going to try to help you get over that. Also, if you're a recent graduate, especially seniors who are getting bachelor's degrees, but to some degree, grad students too, especially if your work history is not as robust as you might want it to be, you may feel panicked and pressured to accept the first offer you get, and also you're afraid that if you start negotiating, what if they withdraw the offer? All these things are going through your mind, so we're going to talk about that. Remember that it is always important throughout the interview process, and especially when you get to the issue of salary, to be marketing yourself as confident and decisive, okay? And this is, as I say, equally important with regard to salaries. So, if at all possible, never say a word about salaries until you have a clear verbal job offer. I know that a lot of employers, you know, before they even, you know, they'll have some HR person call you up before they've even interviewed you in any significant way and say, what is your salary range? Or they might even say in a job posting, please list your salary, a desired salary. Remember the word range. It's a magic word because it denotes a little bit of flexibility, either upward or downward. And you want to do research on what does a job pay. Where do you do that? By the way, the best place to go is glassdoor.com. You can get into that website, it's free, and input information as to what kind of a job it is, how big is the employer, in some cases, if it's a better known employer, the name of the employer, and also the city where you're going to be working, and it will give you its best estimate as to what a starting salary might be, and it can be very helpful. It's not going to be extremely precise. I mean, you know, they're not going to have it down to the dollar, but it'll be a pretty good guide. All right, glassdoor.com. Anyway, Never talk about salary on your own until it's gotten to the point of a job offer. Why? Because that is when you have your point of maximum leverage. Okay. And understand it from the standpoint of an employer. And I was someone doing the hiring a lot more than I was someone being hired throughout my career. I guess I was lucky that way. You go through a process with someone where you've been narrowing it down from maybe 100 candidates to a dozen candidates who will get their resumes really closely, and then maybe 7 or 8 people will get phone interviews, and then they'll narrow it down to 3 or 4 people who will actually get in-person or Zoom or Microsoft Teams interviews. And then there's, at that point, maybe a second significant round of interviews, possibly even a third significant round of interviews, depending on how obsessive compulsive the employer is, how careful they are, whether they want to start marching you up the ladder. So you first talk to an HR person, then you would talk to maybe some peers that you might be working with. Then maybe in a third round, you would be talking to the person who's going to be your supervisor. And then perhaps, depending on how large the employer is, for example, a small or medium-sized nonprofit, the CEO may well want to have the final say on whether or not a person gets hired. Okay. Also, never discuss compensation or benefits when interviewing. Like if you're going to work at home, you want them to give you a laptop. You want them to pay for a cell phone, etc. Okay. Never talk about that stuff. You want to have that discussion when you have the point of maximum leverage. They've gone through this process, they've settled on you, and the last thing they want to do is go back and look at other candidates, their second choice, their third choice, or heaven forbid, open the whole thing back up again. Most employers view recruiting as a pain and as something that they kind of squeeze in between their real responsibilities for their job. And they just don't want to do that. Once they got to you as the candidate, they want to finalize it. Now, if you are forced to discuss about salary, again, use that magic word range, such as, i.e., I am seeking a salary in the $50,000 range or $60,000 range or whatever it is, which denotes that you may want it above there. And that number you give them should be based on an informed amount of research, particularly from Glassdoor.com. Try to shift the discussion and ask them what their salary band is. If they're federal government, you will, it's public information as to what the salary band is. Certain other kinds of employers, it might also be public information. A lot of employers, it won't be public. So let's say actually, I'm getting into discussion of the midpoint, which I don't want to do yet. Why do you want the salary band information? Obviously, you want to know what is the potential maximum they might pay me and what is the potential minimum, and are they trying to slam dunk me? Is it a $50,000 to $70,000 salary band and they're offering me $50,000 and they're trying to rush me into signing on the dotted line, which, by the way, is what a lot of employers do. So somebody just asked a question before I go into the issue of the midpoint. Some applications now require a numeric, numbers only, and doesn't allow range response in order to proceed to the next page of the application. What do you recommend? Well, you're going to have to give them a number. I mean, what can I tell you? That's, they've programmed the system to only let you give them a number. But at some point, hopefully, you're going to talk to a human being. Your first interaction with a real person might be a human resource person, and you're going to want to bring up that, you asked me to settle on a range in the application, and I gave you that, but I do want to emphasize that that is a range, and I would hope that potentially, depending upon how our discussions go, there might be a way to move that up. Now, that does violate my rule about not bringing up salary until later on, but if they've already brought it up, you want to be in a position where you can defend yourself, okay? And so, yeah, but don't put that salary into that application until you've, again, gone to Glassdoor and gotten an idea of what you think it ought to pay. Because a lot of employers will take advantage of you in the sense of underpaying you. A job might be in the $50,000 to $70,000 range, and maybe you've got a lot of experience and you should be making at least $60,000, let's say. but you only ask for 50 because you didn't bother to do some research as to what the job might pay. And then they're happy to say, okay, you asked for 50,000. Yes, we're happy. We can do that. We can pay 50,000. And let's move on to the forms. When can you start? And understand that a lot of HR people are trained to just rush that decision. And if you've never gone through it before, or maybe you've only done it once or so, it's intimidating and it's a bit of a blur. Okay. Another question. Is it all right to ask about the salary band during the interview, even though the discussion has always not been brought up? Okay. No, I would not do that. You shouldn't ask about salary band until you, if at all possible, until you've got the verbal offer. And then they'll say, oh, we want to pay you 50,000. And then you say, well, can you tell me what salary band is, please? Could I know what flexibility there is? They're going to say yes or no. Depends on what their policies are and things like that. Giving you the salary band, they know, gives you a point for negotiation. And that's something they usually don't want to do. Okay. Now, every salary band has a midpoint. This is a nearly sacred concept to human resources people. I found out a long time ago. Why? So if the salary band, as I say here, is 40 to 50, and I know that's low, I should have raised the number, but let's just, this is hypothetical, okay? Salary band is 40 to 50. The midpoint is 45, okay? Now, why is that important? Because the way that HR people are trained, and by the way, I'm not being sarcastic about this. This is the way they're trained, and nor am I making fun of it or anything. They're taught to bring anyone in over the midpoint because it will limit employers to give you raises over the next few years. We're all past the midpoint. Let's say you get a job with a band of 40 to 50, and they're already paying you 47. They don't have a lot of room left if you stay there, let's say 4 years, as to how much they're going to give, how much more they can pay you. And here's the thing: if you're at the top of the band at a certain point, if you're at $50,000 in that, hypothetical 40 to 50 band, then theoretically they can't give you any more money because they would be violating it. They would be, and everybody else who's in that found out about it. Guess what? They'd be ticked off. It would be licensing factor. So in this case, I was a senior manager for a long time in my career. Looking at it also from that point of view, I don't want demoralized employers, people, office, and closing the door and saying, I'd like to talk to you about what you just paid that person who just started because I found out that they're making 3,000 above the band, and I've been here for 5 years doing an excellent job, and why I can't be paid that much money. So you're all of a sudden you're thinking, and I got to deal with this now. But it's also and fair play and fair pay. Okay, so people are almost hired above the midpoint. That's understand. So if they tell you the salary band, what do? You ask for money that is above the band. Now, then you're thinking to yourself, well, wait, he's contradicting. Well, stay with me here for a minute. So again, let's go back to this 40 to 51 just to keep the math simple. So you ask for 47,000 because you know that they're going to negotiate you downward. So in a sense, you understand, okay, I'm going to give them the satisfaction of maybe negotiating me down to 44. And I know that's probably the maximum I can get, because they won't bring me in. Most of the time, they don't even want to bring you in at the midpoint, let alone above it. Okay. So I know the most I get is 44. I ask for 47. We negotiate down, and I know that I've done the best I can. All right. That's what you do. And if, by the way, if the salary band is not acceptable to you, then think about looking for another job. I mean, that's the issue there. Or take the job and be unhappy. Whatever the issue is there. So if you've got relevant experience that merits being above, say, the bottom of the salary range, then you focus your negotiations around that midpoint. And it looks like maybe a couple of people have asked questions here. Let me go back. What's the harm in asking about the salary range during the phone screen? I weeded out a lot of jobs this way and saved arduous interviews. That may be a good idea. A phone screening is typically done with an HR person, and it's early in the process. And it's quite possible that, as you say, you at that point may have decided, I'm not going to waste my time. This is $20,000 less than I need to make. And so you just politely say, well, thank you. Is there any possibility it could be higher than that? Well, no, that's our band. Well, then look, I'm not interested. Thank you very much. And that happens a lot, particularly, by the way, with recruiters, which some of you may not, most of you probably haven't had experience with yet. But as you get further in your career, you get more experience, you get more specialized, and your LinkedIn profile more interesting to because they watch that a lot. Recruiters will often call you hoping that you make less money than you do. Okay, this is adult children. They get called by recruiters periodically who hope that they're making a lot less money than they really make. And then, typically my daughter will actually laugh and say, no way, that's not even close. If you were thinking about paying me 50% more, then we might be able to talk about this. But that's, so that actually, you do make a good point. You could be talking about it very early in a phone screening, but not after that, okay? Because you don't want to get into some kind of negotiation before they've even offered you the job. Why? Because you're in a position of power at that point. You don't have the leverage at that point, okay? Someone asks, I'm going to be sure I'm not skipping over questions here. If the verbal offer includes a number, how did they tell me the lowest end of the band? I'm not sure what you mean. If the verbal offer includes a number, of course it would include. Oh, you mean if they just say we want to hire you, but then maybe they might not say how much they're going to pay you. If a verbal offer is made to you without mentioning salary, you'll say, well, I'm really delighted and I'm honored, and I hope we'll be able to talk about salary now or tomorrow or whatever. Is that what you're getting at here? I don't know. You may want to give me another question to tell me if I'm not really addressing what your question was. Yeah, that's the best I can do with that question at this point. I'm not sure I completely understand it. I'm going to keep going back to you, but follow. I will get to you if I don't see, and I don't see it here. Okay, so yeah, let's keep going to the next slide. What does this job pay? Okay, as I said, Glassdoor.com. I also mentioned GuideStar.org. This GuideStar.org can list some salary information, but for profit organizations only. Okay, and you might get some info. There's also a couple other places called free.com and payscale.com, so you can try them all potentially, depending on how much time you have and how much you really want to pursue this information. You can also ask alums, especially people who might be a year or two older than you, whom you're friends with, or whom you reach out to on Alumni Fire. I almost forgot the name of it. If you don't know about Alumni Fire, it's from AU or students and recent alums to reach out to any kind of alum. Not all of them are recent, and to have them help you in your internship search, in your job search, with other kinds of. It is possible you could ask an alum who same field that you're trying to get into, what should this job pay that I'm for now, and I think I'm going to get an offer. Now I say use LinkedIn to find them. You want to use Alumni Fire. If you use LinkedIn, the thing about it is there's something like 150,000 AU alumni on LinkedIn. All right, but volunteer to do anything. They didn't volunteer to help you or whatever. If you're not familiar with Alumni Fire, and I'll tell you in a moment how to access it. It's I don't know, 3,500 or so alums who have volunteered to be helpful. Okay, that's the advantage. You find it, you go to Handshake, and you look at the left side navigation menu on the homepage, and you click on resources, and then you will, from there, you will pretty easily find Alumni Fire. and you get into it. You have to register it. There's no cost involved, and you access alums that way. Okay. Now I want to see if I've got more. Someone is recommending called Zippia.com. I think all of you can see this, but just in case, zippia.com/salaries also has salaries information. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. So, take good notes, obviously, both, Glassdoor and all these other sources, as well as if you have got a friend or an alum or whatever that can give you informed information, okay, and go from there. But, don't ask someone whom you like and respect, like maybe a parent who may not have the foggiest idea, but they're really good at guessing, I'm one of those dads who likes to offer opinions on things, even if I don't know much about them. And sometimes my children listen to me. So be careful about uninformed opinions about what a job ought to be or whatever. Okay. Let's keep going. Now, be ready to negotiate from the second interview onwards, because some employers may make a job after a second interview, some after a fourth, most after either a second or third. In fact, oftentimes a third job interview is a final session at which they make the offer and then try to negotiate you by oftentimes steamrolling you, as is going on at the bottom of the screen there, into accepting an offer. Okay, so you go in thinking this is another job interview, a few minutes into it, they say, well, we really like you, and we're going to make an offer, and we'd like you to at the first of the month, and here's our salary offer. So we'll be sending you documentation, and we'll go from there. How does that sound? Okay. Also, by the way, depending on your family situation, something like health insurance can make a tremendous difference. If you're a single person, probably, health insurance is not, and your premium is not going to be very high, and you might not even pay any premium. But if you've got a family and dependent, then health insurance can have a big swing as to what it's going to cost you in terms of monthly premiums and such. So what they cover, is there $1,000 deductible at the beginning of every year so that you have to have $1,000 in medical expenses before you can collect any kind of medical reimbursement? Or are there outrageous copays every time you go to visit a doctor, $40 or something like that? And it also depends, of course, on what kind of health you're in. Also, whether you're men or women. Women generally have to visit physicians more than men, when you're young, that is. And so there's that to consider, and you may want to be looking at the healthcare plan, particularly with regard to that. Any other questions here? I don't see any. So, and also there's the other things you want to negotiate. I'll be getting ahead of myself there and things like that, but we'll get to that in a little bit, in more detail in a little bit. So remember that you want to slow down the process. Usually at this point, when they made an offer, whether at the end of the second interview or at the end of the third interview or after the third interview or whatever, what they want to do is speed it up, get the paperwork done. Yep, we've got that person, we've got them nailed down, and yeah, they'll be starting in 2 weeks. Okay, great, wonderful. Now we're on to the next thing. You want to slow this process down. It is in their interest to speed it up. It is in your interest to slow it down. There's nothing wrong with asking for a day or two to an offer. And that's where, if you haven't done the research on Glassdoor or some of these other sources, you want to do that. Or maybe you want to go back and do more research to, confirm what you think it ought to pay. The other thing is you want to have kind of a magical one-pager in your back pocket, so to speak. Now, what do I mean by that? This is going to be a list of every relevant job or internship. It's going to be 2 columns. Every relevant job or internship you worked, not with bullet points about what you did and all that stuff. It's not a resume. Just, I did this job, and here's the number, or internship. Here's the number of months I worked at it. Keep it with months. And then if you have a master's degree, be audacious and say master's degree equals 24 months experience. Reason for that is, particularly in DC, the federal to have, it hasn't had for a while, used to have a policy that a master's degree equaled 24 months of experience. Okay. You can still try that. There are some employers who might accept it, others who might laugh, but there's no harm in trying. So you're listing your jobs and your internships and how many months you worked at them. And you're listing, if you're getting a master's degree, 24 additional months. Total up the months and then divide by 12, and you got the number of years and months that you're claiming for relevant experience. Then when they make that offer, you pull this out of your, electronically, it's ready to go as an email attachment, or it's, or if you're in person, you've got it printed out, and be ready to argue. The important thing is here with specificity as to why you should be paid more, because what you don't want to be in a position of doing is arguing for a few extra $1,000 based on what? Because you're a nice person, because you need it, not because you need it, it's because they want to pay because they think they should. Okay. And that's where this kind of a one-pager, total job, all jobs and internships on one side, total months on the other side, total up the months, the 24 months for a master's degree, if you're getting one, and then say, well, I actually bring this much experience. And by most employers, every step band, and now it's unclear what a step is. It might be $1,000, it might be more, could be less. Every step is equivalent experience. You can claim 4.5 years experience for a particular job that you've been made. They made an offer. You could try to claim that you want $500 more, something like that. All right. Now I do think we definitely have at least 2 additional, questions. How do you negotiate if you took a year break, but you are seasoned in your field, but they want to put you in the lower end of the range? Just because you took a break, if you still have the experience, you want to, that's got to be in that one pager, and you want to shove it down their throat. No, not really, I'm kidding. But you want to, they understand that. I mean, if you took, for paternity or maternity purposes, child rearing, health, whatever, there's no reason why they should be giving you a letter because you were out of the working for a year. That's not time. 10 years, arguments can be made you're not current with whatever that job is, especially if it has technology. But even not. But you were talking about years, so that should not have any bearing at all. And you should say that to them, maybe a little less bluntly than I'm saying it, a little more gently, and go from there. And I see another question that just popped up. How do you negotiate? Oh no, that was the year break. Sorry. If you're a part-time student, should you add 36 months for the experience? Oh, you mean say that your degree is worth 36 months? No, don't try that. If it's taking you 3 years to get this degree, and there's nothing wrong with that, don't say that it's 36 months experience. I'm saying that at times master's degrees have been equivalent to 24 months. That's it. Okay. Don't try to make that longer just because you were a part-time student, unless you were working that time at relevant employment. Okay. So that's another issue. Hope that's clear. Oh, and I just scrolled up and I see more questions. Would a master's certificate position you to earn higher or only a degree? You've heard mixed reviews. A certificate should position you to earn how much more? Then we territory. One of my children had a graduate level certificate that really bolstered her qualifications for what she was trying to do, and she was able to argue for more money. I just frankly don't remember, but it did help her case, and they were impressed by it. How would you list that on that one pager? That's a good question. You can be audacious and list your certificate and say that it's worth 6 months, 12 months. I wouldn't try for any more than that. It also depends on how much work went into it. You know, in the case of something my daughter did, it was a certificate, a graduate level certificate with an additional specialization for her in forensic accounting, which is something high demand. And she didn't put that one pager together. She just argued for more money based on the fact that she had it. And they skill or it's high demand that they agreed without any argument. But yeah, a certificate should be worth more. How much more is really, it depends on the job is already paying, how much other experience you've got. You know, certainly at least a couple $1,000s. Beyond that, it could be worth more. It depends on what it is and how much more expertise it allows you to claim. Okay. Hope that's useful. Does the Career Center have a one-pager template? No, we don't. But really, it's not hard. You know, this is not, it's list your jobs and internships. And then on the right side, list the number of months and then total up the months and list the master's degree if you are getting one soon. And then you're claiming, you know, whatever you're claiming there. So, but here's the thing. Don't, you know, if you've been working at Target or Starbucks, don't try to claim that as relevant experience unless you're applying for a job as a retail manager or something, because that's not relevant. Okay. So if the stuff you're doing to make money, whether it's nannying or Starbucks or whatever, is not going to factor in about experience for which you can make at least a reasonable argument that it's relevant, even if it's not totally directly relevant, it's at least somewhat indirectly relevant. I hope that's a good explanation. And we got a lot of questions here. I'll keep going. Been at my job almost a year. I'll be graduating with my master's in December. Is there any additional advice for someone in this position negotiating a raise? That's a whole different issue, negotiating a raise. You should be able to argue. I assume it is relevant to something you're doing for the lawyer. So you should be able to argue that you should get a raise based on the completion of the master's degree. And if you want to argue it's worth an additional 2 years experience, you can do that. And then quantify that way what additional percentage you should be, and also you're maybe wanting to think about salary bands and stuff like that. So that's it. Can a bachelor's degree be listed as experience? Not really. I mean, they want to see it. They want to see it on your resume. But it's not like bachelor's degree is 12 months experience and a master's degree is 24. Master's degrees generally are going to, now here's the thing, you know, if you're getting a master's degree in history, but you're going to some profession that's got nothing to do with history, then that master's degree is not really worth 20 minutes. It might be worth a little bit, and maybe it made you a better researcher, and maybe you're trying to go become a research assistant somewhere. I mean, but the degree's got to be worth it. And the reason why master's degrees are usually worth some additional money is because they give you significantly enhanced credentials. Okay. A bachelor's degree might do that too. And you could argue, you know, I see a lot of some seniors these days who have significant data analytic classwork. In fact, they bachelor's degree in data science or some aspect of it. That's worth a lot. Okay. If you're going into data science and you've already got a significant amount of data science background, as an example, you could try to make an argument that that degree is worth more money, and you can try to quantify in terms of a year or two or whatever. That's one example I can give you. In case of changing industry, going from what, nonprofit to a corporation with a recent MBA, how should you negotiate the salary? If you're new in the corporate setting but seasoned in an, yeah, that's an interesting example, because some corporations look at experience. On the other hand, interviewing you and making you an offer, then they respected that experience. Okay. So first of all, you want to name every month of that experience has even partial residency, right? And I would treat the MBA if you're trying to go into business, it's got to be 24 months. I would be arguing that. Studied a lot of stuff, depending on what your concentration was in MBA. I mean, marketing and business analytics and et cetera, et cetera. That MBA's got to be worth significant. Okay. Let's see. Is there a tactful way to avoid history? If you're, or as happened to me, was applying for, I applied, they just wanted a resume cover letter. Then they got back to me. Then I'm in an interview and they say, and that interview went fine. Then, oh, you're going to meet the media consulting firm in DC. I'm going to meet the CEO. So I meet the CEO. And the first thing she does is, I need your salary history. That bluntly. And I mean, I was who really point fast, and I respected that. And all of a sudden she said, now, what are you making your current job? What about after that? And she stampeded me and blindsided me into it. But I thought about it for a moment, and I thought I have to. And I knew that I was going from an employer that probably paid me more than she was going to pay. So the fact was, telling her my recent salary history was an advantage, because I was worried about her not wanting to hire me, saying, oh, we can't pay you that, because they really needed me for certain reasons. They needed somebody who spoke French, and they needed somebody who was very familiar with Africa and certain other things. So I knew to some degree I was in the driver's seat. But to get back to this question, because I want to be sure I didn't lose track of it, I don't think there is a tactful way of avoiding salary history. By the way, if you're thinking of federal job applications where they want your salary history, you just have to do that. I mean, it's the federal government. So you're either going to give them that or you're not going to. I mean, it's black and white. Okay. Is there something done about the connection? It keeps breaking up. Are a lot of people a problem? I want to know if it's me or not, because nobody else is complaining about it. And I have a very fast connection from my home, which is where I am right now. Anybody else? A couple people are breaking up. Ouch. I'm not sure what to do here. I'll tell you what, let's go on for a couple more minutes and see if this continues. If it does, I might just stop, reboot, ask you to come back into the presentation. But it's better now, they said, which means it's correct. Okay, let's keep going. So where were we here after all? Oops, more questions. No, all right. I don't see any more right now. The big thing here is in that the issue of that one pager is you're giving them specificity. You're not just saying, I want to make $5,000 more. And I believe, I have this additional experience, and I speak Spanish, and you need somebody who's bilingual in this job. So I think I should make more. That's too vague. You want to have it in a much more coherent, logical format. All right. In terms of the way you're going to talk about it. That's basically what I'm getting at there. Now, what is and is not negotiable if you haven't negotiated for a job yet? Okay. Salary is negotiable. The date you start, within reason, probably there's maybe a 30-day leeway there, maybe something like that. But then you also have to pay attention to what the original job posting said. If it said they're in a really big hurry, maybe you don't have as much flexibility on starting date. What is your daily schedule? That can be important, particularly if you've got dependents and stuff to deal with, or if you're trying, if it involves a car commute and you want to avoid rush hour traffic, you may want to come in the office at 7 a.m. and leave by 3 p.m. or something like that. The federal government does that kind of flex time. There apparently are people who commute from like Northern Maryland into DC for federal jobs, and they're sitting at their desk at 6 a.m. and then they're done probably 2 p.m., 2:30 p.m. and they're gone. So depending on the employer, daily schedules can be flexible, but it also depends on your boss. Because even though, for example, a lot of federal employees could be on flexible schedules, I would bet that for certain kinds of jobs, the supervisor will say, we can't be that flexible. We can't have you not here for 3 hours when the rest of the team is here. So, be aware but that is negotiable usually. An employer provided phone or laptop, especially if they want you working at home. Okay. On the other hand, there are some employers that will say, hey, this is a privilege, so you've got to do it yourself, and provide your own phone and your own laptop or computer desktop, and you need to use your own mobile phone. That it depends, but that you can certainly make that argument, and some employers will at least go as far as providing a laptop. Training courses. It depends on the nature of the job and how you see it evolving. Usually that's going to be only a verbal agreement that's not in writing, but you can try to get it in writing, that there's certain kinds of training that you would like to get so that you can better serve the job. And over a period of the next 18 months, you'd like to take 3 days out of the office to do 3 different training opportunities. I'm just sort of pulling examples out of the air here. Okay. Also, future opportunities for promotion. Again, they're not going to give you guarantees of that, almost certainly not. But you can discuss that kind of stuff, okay, and see how they react. What is not negotiable? Health insurance is the same for everybody with an employer, not negotiable. The 401k plan, or if it's a nonprofit, it's called the 403b, not negotiable. It's the same thing for everybody. Vacation time, actually, it's usually not negotiable, but you can try to argue for more. But usually you can only do that when you're further in your career. When I lived in Europe a major part of my life, but when I came back, I was moving into a big think tank, and it was a senior VP position, and they said, yeah, so you'll start out with 2 weeks vacation, because that's what starting employees get. And I said, well, wait a minute, I'm not some entry-level staff here. I'm coming in as a senior executive. And by the way, I've been working in Europe where I have 6 weeks vacation a year. Now, I don't expect you to match that, but they actually agreed to 4. But that was because I was, mid-level. I mean, not mid-level. I was mid-career and I was senior exec. So vacation time could be a tough thing to negotiate more of if you're not that far along in your career. Sick leave, it's going to be the same for everybody, whatever they do. And other minor benefits, like maybe there's health insurance, not health insurance, accident insurance or life insurance even. Typically it's all, and sometimes they offer things like legal insurance, pet insurance if your pet gets sick. Again, it's going to be the same for everybody. Okay. So that's, any questions about that, let me know. What else have we got here? I'm making, let's see, 1840. Okay, that was, people said about 6-7 minutes ago we were breaking up. I hope it's okay and better now. Let's keep going here. How to accept graciously. Show enthusiasm. You want to get off on the right foot with your new employer. I'm really honored that you've reached a decision on hiring me for this position, and I promise I'm going to do the best job possible and to further the mission of employer X, whomever it is. And Ask about reading preparation you can do before your first day on the office. It's, you want to develop a good reputation coming right in as somebody who's willing to go the extra mile. Okay. And hope that's all good. I think that was the last one. So we went 45 minutes because a lot of questions. Normally this is about a half an hour session. Anybody got any more questions? I'll hang around for a moment or two. The big stand in the DC, let's talk about the DC area for just a moment. The job market is really good, okay? But there's also a lot of candidates. And the impression I have had for a number of years now, let's say last 4 or 5 since well, in particular, since I don't want to talk about about the worst part of the pandemic, but since around January 2021, the job market has been really good, and it is showing no signs of slowing down, and the unemployment rate is really low. But the impression I get over all of 2021, all of 2022, and 3 months into 2 months really into 2023, is that we're kind of in a balance in terms of the number of candidates and the number of jobs. And when I say in a balance, I'm mainly talking about people who are going to schools in the DC area who are going to be your competitors. Some of them are at AU in your very classroom. Others are at GW or Georgetown or Catholic University or Howard or University of Maryland. Okay. And not all of them, as you may know, are trying to get a job in DC. But in terms of the DC area, it's a really good job market. And by being focused and intensive in the way you look for jobs, and not just saying to yourself, okay, I've applied to 6 or 7 jobs in the last 3 months, and why haven't I gotten a job? Well, because it's not nearly enough. That's why. I mean, I'm usually not, I don't speak that bluntly to people, but that's what I'm thinking, and that's the point I try to get across. Okay. So, and I think we got another question here. I work in marketing, and the challenge with negotiating for a raise is the ambiguity in how much the marketing department has increased company sales. That's interesting. Do you have advice on what else I can highlight? I would, in situations where a significant part of your job involves quantifiable results, okay? If you're a fundraiser with a nonprofit, in a marketing situation in the for-profit world, you want to be able to put numbers on your resume that, while I was part of this team, sales increased from X to X, which was an X percent more. You want to be able, and the thing is, if at all possible, you want to be able to show a trend with, let's say, 3 different jobs you've had, or maybe 3 different jobs you had with one particular employer where sales increased, or if you were a fundraiser, fundraising increased. That is what they look for. And I know it can be fuzzy because you're almost always part of a team, and you can't claim that you yourself was responsible. All you can do is talk about projects you worked on and any individual work that you were responsible for that was particularly impactful. Okay. That's best I can say. Use numbers as much as you can. By the way, when you're applying for jobs with the federal government and federal contractors, the hiring managers look for specificity in resumes, and that means 2 things. It means quantifiable information, and it means outcomes-focused information. So what's quantifiable? It's not just fundraising or marketing. It's I coordinated the work of a team of 8 people, not just I coordinated the work of a team. If it's outcomes related information, it's, I did this internship and I participated and I wrote the bulk of a chapter that became part of a book that was published online, or I submitted 10 pages of research to my boss, and that person submitted the overall document to a subcommittee of Congress on an important issue. Those are outcomes, which sometimes people neglect to talk about. So outcomes and quantifiable information, really, really important when you're making your, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. And now we're out of PowerPoint, which is good enough. Anyway, so let's see. If there's no more questions, I think I'm going to be signing off. No, there is more. International students. You're at a disadvantage because companies have to go the extra mile for sponsoring you. Here's the thing. Usually if companies want to hire you as an international student, it's because you've got certain skills, and some of that may be a language that is not spoken by a lot of Americans, like Bahasa Indonesian or Thai or Mandarin, etc. And so you have a certain amount of leverage in terms of language skills, assuming that's true, or perhaps you've got high-level technical skills of some kind, or quantitative skills, whatever. Yes, you are somewhat at a disadvantage because if you're looking for an H-1B visa, that requires an expense on the part of the employer, and it's paperwork and it's a hassle. But for example, I worked for World Resources Institute, big think tank in town. They had at that time, and they probably still have, 21 H-1B visas that they can give out. Why? Because they persuaded the State Department 40 years ago, they need to be they are World Resources Institute, and they need to have those, they need to bring in an international staff. And not only that, they brought in a lot of international people who then progressed through the H-1B process over a period of several years, and then eventually became green card holders or citizens and didn't need the visa anymore. And so it was when I was there, a very global group of people, very diverse in culturally, ethnically, etc. And they needed that because their work was, okay? So a lot of employers are going to need you, possibly for reasons like that, because they're trying to have a culturally, ethnically, nationally diverse staff that they can't just get out of the United States. And then there's the issue of skills. So that's the way I would want to think about myself if I were an international student, in terms of what I've got to offer when you're in the subject of salary negotiations. Still more questions coming here. How should you negotiate a salary increase if you are offered a role directly following a minimum wage or stipend paying internship with the same organization? Boy, that's a really tough situation. So you're making $15 an hour or $17 an hour as an intern, and then they want to hire you. And of course, the way they view it is, we're doing a big favor for you, right? We're giving you this huge break, and you're going to move into being a permanent staff member, and this is your dream. And so that's probably, remember at the start of this, I talked about, overcoming feelings of powerlessness. That's a very difficult situation in terms of breaking through the powerlessness. The only thing I can say is go back to that one pager and see what you can come up with in terms of your experience and or specialized skills. By the way, a foreign language that they want you to work in, even if it's Spanish, which is obviously commonly spoken in the US, should be worth a few $1,000s at least. And well, probably not much more than that. But and if it's a more rare foreign language that is not spoken very much by people in the US, perhaps more money. So foreign languages are worth money. But this issue of, moving from an internship into a full-time job, that's about the time when you've got the least amount of leverage, because they know that you were just, somebody they considered to be a student working 20 hours a week, or maybe it was a full-time internship. But you may have to kind of swallow and accept a salary lower than you want, and hopefully within a year, assuming they do annual reviews, make the case that, look, I was coming from an internship there, but I think I've really proven myself now, and then cite a number of reasons as to why you should get more of an increase in salary. Obviously, all of this within the context of that salary band. and how much it hangs over a lot of things. And there's still more people asking questions. How should you negotiate a salary increase if you are offered a role direct? Oh no, I answered that. How should I approach a negotiation if I don't have all of the job requirements? But they're still offering you the job, I assume is what you're saying. That's a really good question. You want to emphasize the positive. That's some really old song from like I don't know, way before, it's like my parents' generation, about accentuate the positive. So again, I go back to that one pager. It might not be a page long, and you talk about the 70% you've got. In other words, the glass is 70% full. It's not 30% empty. Okay, and push through that. Persevere through that. I don't want to say aggressive, but be firm about that as to why the qualifications you have would merit an additional increase. Remember, if you don't advocate for yourself, who will, right? In terms of salary, nobody. I think that in terms of questions. So there's still about 25 of you here. I think we had about 35 people at maximum. Thank you very much for your attention. By the way, I only advise people in School of Public Affairs, and really mostly grad students and a few seniors. If you want more advice on the issue of salary negotiation, I would suggest you go to your career advisor of whatever school you're in. It's the main career center for people who are OC and I'm forgetting all the other schools at the moment. Arts and Sciences, School of Education. SIS has its own career center, and so does COGAT, of course. There's a lot. I'm sure you're well aware that you have your own career center. So, and those people should be able to give you good advice. Okay. So again, hope it's and good luck and good.